All right, Denver section and maybe people from Sri Lanka or anywhere else, thank you for agreeing to fritter away a perfectly good lunch hour with us. We will get started as soon as I can figure out how to run the slide deck.
There you go.
Yeah, it looks like I'm doing that. As far as asking questions, we would like to hear your voices if we can, so we're going to try to figure that out. You know, put something in chat, and anytime there's a burning question, we'll try to get to it. And if not, we'll wait till the end and go from there. So we just did this book, and we call it Beautiful Light for a specific reason. Randall, why don't you tell people how we got started writing the book?
Well, Clifton and I have collaborated on 7 books before this one. This is the first time we're both writing in the book. It was really a fantastic new way of us working together. And we were able to find a publisher that allowed us to do both words and pictures. Our other publishers, one wanted all pictures, the other one wanted all words, and we wanted to do 2. So this has more than 250 images in it. And I think lighting needs to be understood through images. You can't just write about it, you have to see. And that's what we're doing. We're showing before and after pictures, day and night pictures, and lots of pictures of bad lighting, because I think you can spend just as much just as much money on bad lighting as you can good lighting.
And we wanted this book to be useful to a pretty broad range of people.
True.
Because lighting affects everybody. And as we get better products with LEDs, the regular old homeowner can do all kinds of cool things. Maybe you need your electrician to help you. You can't do it all. You certainly need a lighting specifier to do some of the fancier stuff, but things are becoming more possible with LEDs. And so we kind of push the idea a little bit. That's more of a focus to homeowners to say, hey, it's okay to really use LEDs to make really beautiful light. Lighting people have known this for many years, but we still have to be reminded that, you know, halogen MR16s are beautiful, but there's stuff that's even a whole lot better than all that old stuff, and we don't have to worry about that anymore. What do we call beautiful light? And so what Randall was saying is, we're going to start by showing you, you know, what it isn't, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can see good examples of bad lighting everywhere. It's very hard to find good examples of good lighting. And part of what we're doing in the book and part of the presentation today is getting the language of light across, that if your clients and your parents or whoever have the words that they need to use in order to get the idea of what they want in lighting across, then the whole process is going to go a lot more smoothly.
And, you know, we did the sequence of pictures to show the connection of light with emotion, because people respond to the emotion in light. It's often difficult for them to explain it or really even explain their experiences. But it's very clear that the difference between this picture and this picture, you know, this picture makes me feel like this person smiling and serene and ecstatic, because I think this picture is an exquisite piece of lighting.
Me too.
You know, it's got views, it's got beautifully modulated accent lighting, and it's got balance, it's got visual interest, it welcomes you into the space. All these things are what beautiful light is. And so here's another very typical example of what it isn't. Now, this is actually a very nice interior design, which is really pretty much trashed by high CCT lighting that's appropriate for a parking garage or a police station or a dentist station office.
Yeah, or home taxidermy, I think, would be perfectly done.
Yeah, you know, and so this can be fixed, but this is a very common thing that happens. People spend a lot of money on fancy European lacquered cabinetry and all kinds of fancy stuff, and then blow the design with lousy lighting. That is an afterthought. That's really the antithesis of what lighting design is about. It's not an afterthought. This is a place that I'm in this place right now. This person is not next to me, but
kind of.
I know she feels this way, which is serene. This place, the immediate split-second impression you get from a picture is, wow, I want to go there. I want to be there, and I want to relax. This is what beautiful light is all about. Gives you that feeling.
Yeah, somebody mentioned that downlighting has killed ambience, and I agree with that completely. In the book, we do talk about trying to shy away from recessed downlights. Fixed downlights don't do really much of anything unless you're lying on the floor looking up, then it works, but that's a very hard way to entertain. If you're going to do a recessed fixture, do one that's adjustable so they can be directed towards art, plants, tabletops, but not ever over seating areas.
Yes, and welcome to an antipodal person from Adelaide, Australia. I just learned that word from Thomas Patterson, famous Australian lighting designer, who referred to himself as being antipodal. I thought that was hilarious. So Randall really did bring up like the anti-default downlight movement, which we are big promoters of.
Right.
If you just, we're going to show you how that, one of the most common mistakes that happens is architects love recessed downlights, and they
love a grid.
Ceiling.
Architects love a grid.
Yeah, that's right, and they don't want things getting in the way of their ceiling lights. I mean, that's a valid design consideration, but downlights will make you look like Boris Karloff. We'll show you how bad things are and how to make them better. Anyway, what's the evolution, the biology behind this here? So a theory that I like to talk about is the skylight firelight theory, and it gets back to this kind of narrative that we grew up with, strong daylight coming from above and warm firelight coming from below. So one of the things about this kind of fake theory that we made up is that we're used to higher color temperatures coming from above and lower color temperatures coming from below. Now that's a general idea here, but it also means that skylight and firelight, in terms of where the direction of the light comes from, we evolve with these quote natural things. So how did it happen in interiors that we that we have what we have today? And so these are very diagrammatic diagrams that show that we had skylight and firelight in the first shelters we ever made. And there was the skylight was also did double duty as a ventilation for the smoke. This got more complex, a little bit more complex with Frontier. Whoops, I'm jumping all over the place. I apologize. So eventually our dwellings and residences become mixtures of increasing amounts of actual firelight when it's there, electric light and daylight. Now the problem that happened in example 3 is as soon as electric light came in, everybody just was stuck with a single light bulb in the ceiling, which is like that ugly shot the ceiling fan light thing, and left it at that. Right. And that's where a lot of lighting just stayed, like a single light bulb in the middle of the room. Even in my house, I still have a couple rooms that are like that because I'm too lazy to do anything else about it. But eventually in 4, what we get is a big mixture of a bunch of different light sources doing different things, and it's a complex balance. And so the jump from single source in the ceiling to vertical surfaces, lighting the roof, ambient, all that stuff, that's the big shift that's happened. It's much easier to do this now with LEDs. They're more flexible, smaller, beautiful color. You can put them everywhere. So that's what we have in terms of a design paradigm. Now here's where I get a little weird and esoteric, because I showed Randall this picture and he goes, "What is this all about?" And so bear with me. I hope I don't lose people on this, but this is all about the evolution of beauty. This is an Argus pheasant, which is arguably developed the most elaborate system of markings for doing mate attraction. And it doesn't mean that he is the strongest or can evade predators or has any other qualities that make him a better mate to the lady Argus pheasants. It just means that he's the prettiest. And that's what's driving evolution at a very basic level, is the prettiest males get picked by the females. And so it's utterly irrational. So that means that when we're doing things with beauty in design, we're often in a very irrational space. And it's that irrationality which is driving things. The more we understand it, the better we can work with beauty. We're bringing this idea of beauty, to put it first and foremost, in residential lighting, because it's a lot more important than energy efficiency or good engineering or all the fancy smart stuff you can do. If you have a beautiful space and you know how to make that, then you're going to be much happier and your clients are going to be much happier and life will move on smoothly. So that's the thing about beauty.
Yeah, well, LEDs also, they allow us to be energy efficient and beautiful at the same time.
That's
so
right.
Getting the best of both worlds.
That's right. It's not a trade-off at all. So now we're going to talk about how do we do this? How do we make light that's beautiful? And, you know, it comes first from lighting the right things. We are the people who say, light the people, light the human beings in this space, not
right.
only the furniture, light the fabrics and finishes and the food, the things that we care about. You know, don't just show the architecture and the furniture and the fancy stuff that you want to show off, like the pheasant, even though that's important too. We forget to light human beings, including ourselves. And so, you know, we're making kind of a big point of that in our book and in this presentation, to think about what skin color looks like and what do you look like in the mirror when you get up in the morning. So we you know, and that means that, you know, the vanity in the bathroom is super important. We're big proponents of light layering, articulating the different layers in a space. This is commonly understood practice, but the more you do it, if you even have two sources in a room, cross illumination or whatever, you're way better than having a single source, almost always. And so the picture at the right, to me, is one of the best examples I've seen out there of beautifully balanced lighting. It just all hangs together. It hits you in 1 second that it's in a really beautiful space.
Yeah, and you're drawn in. The light it's subtle. It doesn't slap you in the face. The illusion is the light's coming from the table lamps and the hanging fixture, whereas really the light is coming from indirect light sources behind the beams. There's a soffit that goes around the room. There are accent lights that highlight the facade of the fireplace. It's nice to have all of that light bouncing around, and you happen to look really good in that space too.
Real quick, we have a question from Noah Parsons.
Uh-huh.
I can read that. Does the emergence of warm dim make fixed downlights more palatable from an ambiance perspective, or should they still be avoided?
Well, yes, warm dim is a new technology. It's out there and people are using it now gradually. But in terms of directionality, that doesn't do anything. We're about what Randall said earlier. You're going to have to use downlights, and we're not saying don't use downlights, but make them adjustable so you can adjust vertical surfaces, so that you can light vertical surfaces. That's what we care about lighting.
Yeah, and I mean, I do like the warm dim having that option, but I still want the lights also to be flexible and not fixed as a downlight.
Whenever possible. Now, the other thing about beautiful light is it's in balance. And so this shot shows that electric light is in balance with daylight. Daylight is a big part of this room. Now, one of the things that people forget is bright daylight like there's a fair amount of bright daylight in this, requires more lighting indoors because the eye adjusts to the brightest thing it sees, and the brightest thing it sees by far is the outdoor light. And so that means that the room is more useful with some lighting in it. And you need to understand that as a residential and a regular non-residential lighting designer. It goes counter to energy efficiency unless you somehow can help to manage the daylight in the windows. And that's not always the job of the lighting designer.
There's lots of ambient light in this room bounced off of that ceiling. The fixtures in the main room are on the side that you can't see, but if you go to the far right, we've gone beyond the doorway, and you can see one of those fixtures near the top of the screen. It projects light up and out into the space without drawing attention to itself.
And we're seeing vertical lighting on the walls next, which helps to soften the impact of the windows, which are very bright.
Correct.
So that's balance is a big part of beautiful light. Controls are a big part of making light beautiful. And people think of controls as, oh my God, do I have to do it? It's all this complicated electrical stuff. I hate it. And it's complicated. Absolutely. Are they getting better? Well, maybe. They're also getting more complicated, which is not better. And so when they're done right, they make spaces more beautiful because you can modulate the levels and the balance of light. So they're part of the beautiful picture. And of course, fixtures, LEDs today, there's a crazy variety of really beautiful fixtures that make really beautiful light. My favorite one is right down there on the bottom, which is, I don't know whether you've seen this, but it's a task lamp made from Sicilian orange peels. And it has a fragrance to it, and it gently warms up and everything. So, people are doing as specified.
It's edible.
Yeah, it could be if you get hungry. There's a massive amount of really beautiful stuff to choose from, and not only beautiful in terms of decorative fixtures, linear fixtures that can do color tuning, great optics, innovative optics, very small. You can put them in little tiny coves and all of that. So that's a big part of beautiful light. And then another part of beautiful light is having a synchronized team and a good design process. This is something that we know in practice it's often hard to talk about and teach, but that's how you do it.
It's interesting, Cliff, that now we've got Zoom, and whereas people couldn't really all get together and sit down at a design table, we are virtually able to do that. We can throw up the plans and we can move our cursor around and talk and drop things in, so that even now during COVID, we can still operate as a team and come up with a beautifully integrated design that's cohesive. We're not working separately.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because we're finding out that we can do things cheaper and easier. And of course, Zoom is that. But we all yearn for that moment where we're sitting around the table looking at samples and making sketches and sticking them up on the wall. Right now we need to take best advantage we can of what we have. But the key thing about the teaming is that if you can get everybody at the table early on, that's like the single best thing you can do. So, and communication, we talk about this a lot in the book. You can't just have the architect throw a design to the owners and say, put some light in it. And, the coordination items need to be seen far in advance. That's part of making light beautiful. So now we're going to go through each one of these characteristics in a little bit more detail. Here is a beautiful face with lots of different lighting conditions. Theater lighting people know how much you can change the character of a character or person, depending on what you do with light. Now, almost all of these are common conditions in residential lighting. The Boris Karloff downlights only thing is really the cost that you have for allowing the Swiss cheese grid of downlights only, fixed downlights only on your ceiling. And if that's all you have in your bathroom, then that's what you're going to look like in first thing in the morning. It's
That's depressing.
far from optimal, right? Daylight is wonderful, but in the lower right corner, you can't see anything if you're backlit by really strong daylight. You know, your eyes just won't see that face. You know, so all of these lighting conditions, except for the ones that are extreme, are appropriate at some point, but you need to understand the different variations in lighting that happen depending on direction of light. This is really all about direction of light. And at the vanity in the lower left corner, when you cross illumination, not only are you getting a full shape of the face, you can see what you're doing, which is important. And then CCT is important as well. Color rendering and color temperature. This is a series of studies I did with Russell Abraham, one of the best architectural photographers in the world. We were wanting to see what happened if we didn't use photography lighting, which is a xenon 5000K standard, supposed to be daylight. And we lit these subjects, which we wanted to have a lot of skin to see what's the effect on rendering skin color. And it's very dramatic. At the top, it's an 80 CRI LED at the time, which there's still a lot of product around out there. At the bottom, yeah, there's a lot of 80 CRI product. And at the bottom, you have a 95 CRI, and everybody looks better. Interestingly enough, the darker the skin is, the more red in it, it's rendering better. And I think we probably all understand about spectral power distributions with LEDs and how the early ones didn't have enough red. So CRI, excuse me, yeah, that's right, color rendering, not only CRI, you can call it TM30 or whatever other metric you want, but that's really important in residential design. And then it happens at the vanity where the makeup is done. And guys do makeup too, okay? Like, that's me. I actually do that to my face when I'm out there hunting waterfowl. I don't do it in a room that looks like this, but you know, I make sure that, anyway, that's kind of a joke, but still. And this is one of the projects in our book where the designers really went all out to make a very fancy, very custom, purpose-built vanity mirror. You want to talk about this one a little bit?
Yeah, this was designed by Alfredo Zapparoli, a lighting designer in San Francisco. His company is called Techlinia. And these are custom designed vanity lights that I think are pretty spectacular. And they're using a perimeter of LED illumination in the warm dim behind a mirror that floats out from kind of, if you imagine a frying pan with rounded sides. So the mirror is the top to the frying pan, and then behind the mirror is the LED lighting. And it gives you that beautiful, even illumination on your face so that just psychologically, you feel good for the rest of the day. If you had a recessed downlight over you and that was the first thing that you saw, you would just kind of be depressed for the rest of the day because you just thought you looked horrible.
Now, wouldn't you say that there are a lot of new vanity products out there that are really good?
There's a lot where they're now integrating the light into the vanity mirror itself, so nothing's projecting out. I really like that. Having that dimming quality. I like that you can dim through daylight to evening light to candlelight. So when you are doing your makeup and getting either ready for the day or going out for the evening, you can have the color temperature of light that you're going to be seen in instead of getting stuck with one color temperature.
Super important. Okay, so how do we go about balancing light layers? So again, here's something that hits you and you're like, oh, it's beautiful, but why? And so to articulate the different layers, you know, we've got accent calling out furniture, and these are what adjustable downlights.
Yeah.
Ambient is reflecting off vertical surfaces and the ceiling.
Correct.
Raising is calling attention to visual interest that draws your eye through the room. And decorative provides, you know, visual interest. And also, I think this one is an uplight downlight. Is that, I can't quite see it because.
Which one? We're not really seeing anything decorative in here. There are in other rooms of the house, but not in this particular space.
I guess I'm kind of thinking of this thing in the upper right as a decorative fixture.
Yeah, that thing in the upper right-hand corner is a rectangle of indirect LED lighting to give the ambient light for the kitchen.
Sorry, I'm really messing up. Yeah, and then task is on cooking. Is that a cooktop? Yeah, it looks like a cooktop.
Yeah.
Okay,
that is
so
a good
that's super important. So, you know, we have all these elements in one place and they're balanced is the main point of that.
And the other thing is that we want it to be, you have open plan here. So you want the kitchen to be as inviting as the rest of the rooms that are adjacent, as opposed to being so bright and overlit that it visually overpowers the rest of the environment.
And so then we get into controls. Here is a room with 3 vastly different scenes, and daylight is part of the mix in that too. And this is all accomplished by scenes and scene controls and the balance between all these different elements. Back to the comment Randall just made about differentiating one space from another. You know, that's one way you can do it with controls and zoning, to, you know, have scenes that balance between different rooms. Okay, so what does the good process look like? What does the team look like? And, you know, one of the comments, or one of the things we're going to talk about a little later on, is how residential design is so different from commercial design. But even in a small residential project, you may have all of these players in the mix, and they're all having a different part of, you know, a different role, a crucial role. The owner is part of the team too, and so everybody here plays a part, and you need to understand your choices in terms of how each one of these people is going to impact the final result. Here is a very complicated diagram to make your head spin, because it's a schematic representation of what actually happens in a design project. You select your fixtures, you determine controls, you select drivers and dimmers. Are they compatible? If not, you go back and do that all over again. If you get samples, do they work? Yes, you're good. If not, you go back and do it all over again. And so in a way, this is sort of an abbreviated diagram, but it's still true that there's many different steps. It's not perfectly linear. You often have to go back and change things. If you're not planning ahead, the more you're gonna have to go back and change things, and that you know, that's not what we want. That's less than optimal. So and all of the people that we showed you in the previous slide are involved in this stage. This is another schematic diagram that shows who pays for what and who makes the decisions. And the one that's at the middle of this in general is the rep agency, because they're the ones that are in charge of helping to get everybody information on products and availability and everything. Controls manufacturers are important depending on the complexity of the residential project. You'll have them involved at a certain point to either to customize something or just help installation or you know, compatibility issues, all that kind of stuff. Looks like we have a chat question. Okay, does the oh, we already got that. We already answered that. Okay. Anyway, so and then, whoops. again, this is just an approximation of what happens, but it's important to watch the money flow, who pays for what, and at what stages it happens. And then at the end, the building inspector has to sign off on everything. And they're, of course, a very important player in the whole thing. So we've got this question here of residential design versus everything else. And so on the left, we have a very beautiful thing. And then on the right, we have a thing which may be considered beautiful, but the purposes are totally different. In the home, the purpose is to make you feel relaxed and serene and have a sanctuary. You're not really supposed to be working. The purpose is also to show off things. I mean, that's a very big part of residential design. We all want our houses to be more perfect than they are, no matter who we are, no matter how much money we have. So that's kind of a hidden agenda that nobody would ever say to a client, oh, well, you just want to show off your stuff. Well, we can do that. Right. And on the right, the objectives are, well, we have to see stuff, but I want my people to work really hard and really fast and get really productive so that I can get insanely rich really fast and buy another Lambo, another Lamborghini. You know, and that's where a lot of the discussion of productivity happens around lighting and circadian and all this stuff, and you know, and views and everything. So you don't have that discussion in the house, like how productive am I going to be in my house? No, it's about feeling good. Now, what's changing? What are similar and what are different between residential and commercial? In residential, wouldn't you say, Randall, that beauty first is really what's driving the bus?
Yeah, I think we're sort of verbalizing something that has been hinted at, but I really do. I want to make the people beautiful, the home beautiful, the art beautiful. I think that is the main thing.
It is, and people care about, you know, people do care about fancy features like controlling stuff from Alexa and all that stuff. They don't care very much about energy efficiency in residential because LEDs are super efficient. You know, the deal is done there. In the commercial and institutional world, beauty is not the first thing. It's make people more comfortable so they can work better. I mean, it sounds kind of mendacious, but it's really true. And then, you know, make it work so we don't get complaints from facilities, and so that we save money on energy. That's important. I guess the point here is that energy efficiency is not really driving lighting design anymore because we're there, we've done it. It's right. Important, we can continue to do it. As Randall mentioned earlier, we don't have to sacrifice efficiency. We can have all the beautiful light we want and it will be very energy efficient, especially with good controls that allow you to dim to the appropriate level. So in residential lighting, you generally have more user control than you do in institutional or office lighting. Is residential design affecting institutional design or office design? I think to a degree, for many reasons. COVID and people saying, oh, I've been home, I like it, I want to work, and I want the same sorts of things when I go back to the office. There's been a trend for a long time in the office of the future to make it more comfortable and everything. What does that mean in terms of controlling different zones for different groups of people? We have not worked this out. We don't have best practices on this yet. It's still a moving target. But I think part of it is that things that are happening in the home are affecting things that happen in the office. People in offices don't have as much control over their lighting as they do in residences. Another thing about residential is most of the education and discourse and discussion happens around commercial lighting. That's where the money is. That's partly why we wrote this book, wouldn't you say?
I would. That I think we want to show how important it is. I mean, people do go to work, not as much as they used to, but having a safe, welcoming environment when you come home or stay home, I think psychologically is very important.
In residential projects too, in the design process, you're going to have more owner contact than you will in a commercial project, and I would think that that's going to help you eventually really have a better design solution. In many commercial or institutional projects, the lighting specifiers have no contact with the owners. They're dealing with the electrical engineer, the architect, the installers, you know, whatever. And the interesting thing about what's going on in residential, which we did not cover in the book. In the book, we did not cover much on smart lighting, and that's partly because we felt it would be almost its own book, and also because things are moving quickly and a lot of things aren't really baked yet. On the other hand, it felt like a scope that we just didn't want to get into with making recommendations or anything. But more new things are happening in residential than in commercial in terms of things like voice activated with Alexa and integration with other systems like smoke detection and security and you name it. It's moving a lot faster in residential than in commercial, which is very interesting, I think. You're going to have smaller teams in the residential side, larger teams with more fancy specialists on the commercial side. And in both sectors, specifiers don't primarily make decisions about daylighting and views. That it just isn't something that lighting designers do yet. I'm advocating that they do. There's a lot of very interesting research coming out recently about this, most notably Lisa Heschong's book called Visual Delight in Architecture, Daylight, Views, and Vision. This is really going to change the industry. So anyway, one of the things that we love to do is talk about bad lighting. And so we learn a lot from it. So we want to open this up to everybody, and please tell us what you think is wrong with this lighting design, with this project.
I know.
Well, here comes one. Let me see if I can open the chat window. Okay. The color too cool. Well, okay, bingo. That's kind of like the first. Yes. Again, what happens here is we go to the store and find a fixture or something, or somebody says, oh, you want one of those, and you're getting a 5,000K thing for the house. And it's like, no, you don't use that color temperature in residential application because it just doesn't make any sense. Lighting on the wrong vertical surface. So that's an interesting comment too. I would say good that there's lighting on a vertical surface, but look at the beam pattern on there. It almost looks like a manufacturer's diagram to show, you know, the beam pattern of their competitors and how lousy it is, right?
Yeah, coning. Don't love coning. That's, you know, those are fixed recessed downlights. They should be more of a wall washer. And if I was doing this job, I would probably do a linear LED that grazed that wall, if that's what we wanted to do. I'd much rather have a piece of art on that wall and light that up than just throw a pattern of light on a blank wall.
That's right. Never grazed drywall. I like that comment.
Because drywall is never perfect.
That's right. You're going to see all the little nicks and stuff. And there's a missed opportunity in those cubbies. I mean, to light those up with some really small, discrete, very flexible strip light would be fantastic. Also the corner in the left is totally dark, and there's no decorative lighting in here. You don't have anything over the, no drama on the tables. That's right.
Yeah, it looks too commercial.
Yeah, it's lighting as an afterthought. That's the general problem with most lighting fails. And when we went to find pictures of lighting fails, the story is that I just did a search on an image bank for modern design. in every single modern design had a really nice, clean interior design with lousy lighting. So what do we see going on here? What are some what are some of the problems in this one?
I want to know why they're using a black refrigerator and a black oven in this all white kitchen. That has nothing to do with lighting, but that's just me.
Yeah. Well, it's an important glare on cupboards. Yes, glare, little points of glare, and on the floor. Splotchy under cabinet lighting, not even.
Right.
Absolute amente. All you do with that is do your optics with the linear strip thing, and then we're probably not seeing the specular. Thank you. We're probably not seeing as the worst of the specular things on that countertop. That's a shiny, probably the kind of uba tuba granite that I have in my kitchen, but we specified a flame finish, not the shiny one. And
Yeah,
that's
that's much better.
absolutely, this is probably one of the most common fails in lighting. Get that.
Yeah, I'm glad that designers are shying away from super shiny surfaces, because it's like trying to light a mirror and you will see all the mechanics of the lighting underneath your overhead cabinets in that shiny surface.
And Henry's calling this showroom lighting style. I would say, yeah, if you're showing the wrong things, you know, like
Yes, hopefully, what not to do.
what not to do. A downlight location, you've got those downlights like a foot from the edge of those cabinets. Why?
Yeah, why?
You know, like, duh, you've already got, you know, under cabinet lighting for your surfaces. So you don't need a whole lot of vertical illumination, as if a spotlight on the cabinet saying, like, cardamom, we know you're in there. Come out with your hands up, you know. Right. Oh,
Right.
look, I keep jumping around here. All right, here's another one. This one's pretty obvious, I think. Yeah, I can't keep control of these. Yeah, somebody said Swiss cheese. That's
right.
It's like gratuitous random downlights that end up lighting the floor and the top of your head. And, you know, with a white room, light will bounce around, so it's not completely awful, but it's the default position here. I would say also that sconce is pretty glary.
Yeah.
You know, it's might have a purpose, but it's so glary that it defeats the purpose. So this is really the Swiss cheese ceiling problem, which is ubiquitous. You see it everywhere. What about this one? What's the problem with this?
It's murky, baby. Murky.
Good one. Someone's saying ambient and no shadowy.
Right. It's totally lacking ambient light. There's no decorative lighting. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adele.
So what's behind this? Why does this happen? I think, and in all of these cases, it's not like everything's a total disaster. It's like when you're thinking about things the right way, and when you know how to see things, that's the key thing. Then you know what to do. Not enough.
Yeah, this is very Architectural Digest. We see it all the time where all the objects are lit, but there's no light for the people. So what you're telling people is that what they own is more important than their guests and their family.
Yeah, only accent lighting is correct, not enough layers. Now, in this scene, though, you're seeing through to this beautiful room, which is inviting, and you're seeing through to the garden outside, which has high visual interest. And so, you know, that's kind of dominating. And this weird sculpture on the table, we call this the drama queen entry. There is no ambient to balance out everything. And so the layer situation is not happening at all. There's no understanding of light layers here.
It's one layer. It's just accent lighting.
How about this one?
Somebody spent some money.
I'd like to point out too that we're not saying that we don't like this design because my evil grandmother loves travertine and so I therefore hate it. You know, it's not about this at all. We're not critiquing any of these interior designs, which many of them are really beautiful. And this is really a very high dollar per square foot installation here. So it looks like people are, you know, glare from downlights. Yes, glare, not focused down. No vanity, correct. Not enough
Right.
light to the face.
Yeah, there's no cross illumination at the sinks. Those straight down lights, it's just going to be so awful. I mean, it would just ruin my day.
And you know, the color of this bathroom comes from the warmth of the stone. So you could probably even cut the color temperature of the light down a little bit so that it wouldn't be at cross purposes. But you know, clearly it's about glare, and it's about the fact that there's been no provision for a vanity in this really fancy bathroom. You know, these are very high end everything, all the hardware and the appliances and everything, and the sinks.
Yeah.
All right, so how about some more burning questions here? We've got a few minutes to go through these. Here's, how early are you seeing interior designers get involved in the design process?
Usually they're the ones that bring us in. At least for me, it's usually the interior designer that says you need a lighting designer on the team. And so I will be in there, hopefully at the very beginning. I love it when I can go in as the plans are being designed with the architect. And those are the other people that will often bring a lighting designer in. Because the more I can integrate the lighting into the architecture, I think the better. And that allows then the decorative lighting to serve the purpose of being the visual sparkle for the space, and not try to be a workhorse in the space. So the earlier we can get in, the better.
I would also say that with interior designers, as a lighting practitioner, the more you can take their material boards and show them under different light so that they can see what's going to happen to their colors and finishes and furniture and all those things. That's a very good technique too. I would say probably that interior designers are becoming a lot more aware of lighting gradually. It's our job as lighting people to make them aware and to show them why it's important. That's why before and after pictures, and it's just such a great technique to go lighting fails. Here's beautiful interior design, and at the end you kind of put the wrong twist on it by not thinking through the lighting. It's a real lost opportunity. So Henry is saying most times clients need to trust lighting designers and not have too much focus on brightness. Now that's an interesting comment. If we could hear you talk, I might say, what do you mean by that? But I think I know what you mean, which is one of the comments that people often make around lighting is it's not bright enough. So have you gotten that much, Randall? And what do you think is going on there?
Give me the question again. I was listening to you, but I didn't.
Oh, what I was saying is that, you know, often clients will say that they need more light. It's not bright enough. And I've seen this situation come up a lot, and I always think that there's a different question behind that. Not that the light isn't bright enough, but it may be the wrong color temperature, not focused in the right place. And simply adding more lighting as a gut level response is often pretty counterproductive.
Often what I get is they say the light's too spotty, and I'm doing accent light on walls, but there's no art there. So they're just seeing round beam spreads of light on the wall. And I said, well, right now there's nothing that those fixtures are doing. They're not performing their function yet. And so once the art is installed, then you're going to start to see how these fixtures work. But right now, in that beginning stage, all they're seeing is the light and not the result.
I mean, the reason why I was putting up this question is that because most of the clients now are so used to being in environments where everything has been overlit, and they don't understand the whole concept of having balance in a space when it comes to lighting. So I remember when I did some projects a few years back, and then this was actually for one was for an office and one was for private residents. And then that is when I started to introduce cities of 4,000 Kelvin into spaces. And a lot of the office people at the beginning, they were quite hesitant, saying that it wasn't as bright as they expected. And then after a few weeks or months in the office space, they somehow managed to reach that comfort level where the lighting was not meant to be really bluish white, but a nice, cool white color was actually much more comfortable. And there's one other project I did in a residential site where they actually had to specify lights that actually suited for them as a human beings and not so much on the overall space. And then the client eventually came back and said, it's not as bright as they anticipated, because the difference was when you look at different clients from different backgrounds, their exposure to different types of lighting techniques affects their understanding of how lighting should be. So that is something where, lighting designers have to have the patience to, brief and make sure the clients understand that this is what is really needed, and find ways on how they can actually balance the two expectations of you as a lighting designer and the client based on their background.
Yeah, Henry, that's an excellent set of observations. And it's back to our other slide was saying, what are the relationships between residential and office? And, expectations are being set quite possibly by too much LED lighting of too cold a color temperature in offices, because people aren't thinking about it. And people have an expectation that that's what you're supposed to have at home. The other big difference is we spend days in offices and nights at home in general. And so that expectation needs to be adjusted. I think it's our job as educators in lighting to make these things clear to clients. Here's another good question. What light levels you design to in residential spaces when all levels are combined? How do you approach that, Randall?
Light levels, I mean, are we looking at foot candles? Because I'm really not doing that anymore. In the beginning, especially when I was doing commercial work, then it was all about how much foot candles we were seeing on surfaces.
Yep.
We're not so much dealing with that now. Light levels, because we put these things on dimming controls, that we're able to give them a lot of light if they want it, but then it's dimmed down to a more inviting level when it's family at home or they're entertaining. We do the brightest light levels in kitchens and baths because you need that, but then being able to dim that down once the work is done makes a big difference.
And I would add that this is where you really have to use a lot of your own experience and judgment. You can go by the IES recommended practice for light level on a horizontal surface, which probably needs to be revised at some point or has been revised recently as a basic minimum for what's your top end design condition for the most light you want. But like Randall just recommended, dimming everything, you're going to adjust it yourself more. Another really important thing on light levels, of course, just to remind everybody that there's a huge difference between perceived light and power. And so when you're looking at dimming levels, you need to understand you're looking at perceived light as the important thing, not the amount of power you're putting through the system. Like 10% dimming is not 10% perceived light, etc. So light levels are what lighting practitioners are good at their craft from years of experience of understanding how to balance all these things. So there's no cut and dry answer.
We had one question that I think got missed. Cynthia asked, what do you recommend as replacements for the downlights in the kitchen and bathroom photos? Can you address that real quick?
Oh, in the bad pictures? Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, let's take the bathroom first. If I was doing that place, there would probably be a recessed waterproof fixture over the shower area. I would take the two out from over the mirror, and what I would probably do, because the mirror already exists, I would drop 3 pendant fixtures down, one centered in between the sinks and then one flanking the outsides of those sinks, and they would be dropped down so that the light shade itself was at 5 feet 6 inches off the floor, so that there was really even illumination at eye level in there. I would love to have seen 1 or 2 fixtures that are close to the ceiling, but still hang down a little bit, that had a more of a decorative element, but helped to throw some ambient light into that space. And I might even have done a little cantilever around the room that allowed us to push some LED lighting in a nice warm color washing across the ceiling itself. So those are the kind of things that I would do. I probably also would have done a little bit of LED strip lighting underneath the cap to the sink area.
Yeah.
So there was a little glow there.
Yep.
And then I would put that on a motion sensor so that when you come in at night, you would just have enough lighting to come in to do what you needed to do without having to turn any of the other lighting in the space on.
And then in the kitchen, I mean, this is white on white, and you can eliminate all the downlights because they're not really doing anything. We want, you know, the one good thing about this is that there's an uplight on the soffit over the sink. You know, the downlights on that soffit on the countertop are a good task, but I don't see them.
Yeah, we could do a recessed linear strip of light in the ceiling there if you did want to graze the faces of the cabinetry.
Mm-hmm.
I would be okay with that, but definitely then continuing LED linear light underneath the overhead cabinets on both sides of that kitchen would make a big difference in having even illumination and none of the scalloping that we're seeing now.
Okay, well, we are done. So thank you, everybody. This is our contact information. And we have a couple of shameless plugs here that I want to get in really quickly. This is where you can get the book. It's at Routledge. And then there's a course I'm teaching on the 2nd. And you out there who are interested in controls, experience with controls, I'd love to get your feedback from your experiences. There's a link to go to fill out a survey. And then Randall will be speaking at Light Ovation on January 6th, and there is a link to that event in case you want to go. So
come on down.
Okay, so thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Clifton. Thank you, Randall. See you all next time.
Okay.
All right. Bye.